I always knew we were poor. My parents drilled that into me from the moment I could understand words. We can't afford that, Jess. Money doesn't grow on trees. If you want something, work for it. So I worked hard. By the time I was 15, I was juggling babysitting gigs, weekend shifts at a diner, and tutoring kids just to save up for college. My parents praised me for being independent, while reminding me that they couldn't help with tuition. Meanwhile, my older brother Ryan seemed to coast by, never holding a job for more than a few weeks. But I didn't question it. I just assumed they struggled less when he was growing up. I didn't think much of it, until the day Ryan strolled into the coffee shop where I worked, wearing a $4,000 Rolex and designer sneakers. I was behind the counter scrubbing the espresso machine when I saw him walk in like he owned the place. His outfit alone probably cost more than my entire savings account. "Ryan," I called out, genuinely confused. He looked up from his phone, smirking. "Jess, damn, I didn't know you worked here." He glanced around, nodding in approval. "Cute place." "Cute? This place barely paid me enough to keep the lights on." I wiped my hands on my apron and gestured at his watch. "Since when can you afford?" I caught myself, but he just laughed. "Oh, this? Birthday gift from Mom and Dad," he said casually, checking the time like he wanted me to notice it again. I felt something in my stomach twist. A Rolex? From our parents? The same parents who once made me put back a $15 dress because it was too expensive? I forced a smile. "Cool. You, get a new job or something?" He grinned wider like he was enjoying some inside joke. "Yeah, sort of. Dad set me up with some contacts. Doing investment stuff. Good money." "Dad set him up? With contacts?" I had begged Dad to help me find internships during college, and he always brushed me off, saying he didn't know anyone in the field. But now, suddenly, he had connections. I must have been staring too hard because Ryan chuckled. "You look like you saw a ghost, Jess." I shook my head quickly, forcing a laugh. Not just surprised. Didn't think Mom and Dad had that kind of money for gifts. His smirk twitched just for a second. "Well, you know, they make things work." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. They make things work. I should have let it go. I should have chalked it up to Ryan getting lucky. But something about that watch, that smug grin, the way he said it, it didn't sit right with me. For the first time in my life, I started to wonder, were we ever actually poor? That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe my parents had finally caught a break? Maybe Ryan's job really was just that good? Maybe they were just better with money now? But none of it explained why I had to work myself to the bone while Ryan got gifted a freaking Rolex. I needed answers. The next weekend, I stopped by my parents' house unannounced. I figured if they had come into some money, I'd see some signs, maybe some new furniture, a fancy new TV, something. But when I stepped inside, everything looked the same as it always had. The same worn-out couch. The same creaky dining table. The same outdated appliances. For a moment, I thought I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was wrong. Then I saw the envelope. It was peeking out from under a pile of mail on the kitchen counter. A thick, expensive-looking thing. The logo on the top caught my attention. Goldmark Investments. Investment firm? My parents didn't have investments. Heart pounding, I casually flipped the envelope over and pulled out the statement inside. My breath caught in my throat. $998,000. I read it again. Then again. My hands started to shake. Almost $1 million. In one account, I barely had $800 to my name. Jessica. I nearly jumped out of my skin. My mom stood in the doorway, eyeing me carefully. I shoved the paper back into the envelope. "Oh, sorry, I was just moving the mail." She walked over and casually slid the envelope back under the pile, not even looking at me. "You should call before you come over, sweetie. We weren't expecting you." I forced a smile, but my mind was racing. Something wasn't adding up. I stayed for dinner, pretending everything was fine. But as I sat at the table, my eyes darted around, searching for more clues. That's when I started noticing the little things. A mom's bag, designer. Not the fake kind either. A dad's watch. Not as flashy as Ryan's, but definitely expensive. The casual mentions of a weekend trip to the mountains. That night I scrolled through their Facebook pages looking for more. Most of their posts were pretty normal, pictures of the house, family events, boring updates. But then, buried in mom's friends' photos, I saw it. A picture of my parents on a yacht. Not just any yacht. A massive one. They were dressed in designer clothes, laughing with champagne glasses in their hands. The caption: "Another perfect day in paradise." Red heart. Paradise. We were supposed to be struggling. I had been struggling. I felt my stomach twist. This wasn't just about the Rolex. My parents were hiding something, and I was going to find out what. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying the same thoughts over and over. My parents weren't poor. They had money, tons of it. And they'd been lying to me my entire life. But why? The next day I called out of work and started digging. If they were hiding something, I needed proof. I started with Goldmark Investments, the name on the envelope. A quick search led me to their website. An elite wealth management firm for high net worth families. Their minimum investment? $5 million. My parents didn't just have money. They had serious money. I pulled up online property records, searching my parents' names. Nothing unusual. Just our small house paid off years ago. But then I tried something different. Instead of searching their names, I searched Ryan's name and bingo. A company called RLM Holdings. The name didn't ring a bell, but when I looked into it, my stomach dropped. RLM Holdings owned 3 properties. A beachfront villa in Miami. A ski lodge in Aspen. A penthouse in New York City. My heart was racing. 3 luxury properties under some random company? And the registered agent? My father. Ryan had mentioned his investment job. But something about it had seemed off. If Dad had connections, why hadn't he ever helped me? I dug into Ryan's employer. According to LinkedIn, he was a senior investment analyst at a firm I'd never heard of. But when I Googled the company, it had no website, no news mentions, nothing. So I searched RLM Holdings again. And there it was. The investment firm Ryan supposedly worked for? It was owned by RLM Holdings. My parents owned the company. Ryan didn't have a job. He was getting paid through a fake company, the same company that owned millions in real estate. And somehow, for some reason, I had been left out of all of it. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands shaking. My entire life had been a lie. I had spent years scraping by, working multiple jobs, living paycheck to paycheck, while my family was secretly living in luxury. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This was deliberate. And I was going to find out why. I needed answers. I spent the whole night going over everything I had found, trying to piece it together. Why? Why had they let me struggle while living in secret luxury? Why did Ryan get access to the wealth while I was left to fend for myself? There was only one person who would actually tell me the truth, Ryan. The next day I texted him. Me, hey, wanna grab a drink? My treat. Ryan, whoa, you offering to pay? You must be doing well, sis. Me, yeah, something like that. I could practically hear the smugness in his text. We met at a bar downtown. One of those places where a single cocktail costs more than my weekly grocery budget. Ryan looked like he belonged there, wearing an expensive watch, designer shoes, and a casual arrogance that made my blood boil. I didn't waste time. Ryan, I said, staring him dead in the eyes. How long have you known? He raised an eyebrow. Known what? I slid my phone across the table, showing him the property records, the fake company, the investment account. His face twitched. I had him. He sighed and leaned back in his chair. Shit. You really went digging, huh? Yeah, I said, my voice ice cold. Now tell me the truth. Ryan hesitated, then took a sip of his overpriced whiskey. Look, Jess. Mom and Dad didn't want me to tell you. They had a plan for you. A plan? I repeated, my stomach twisting. He exhaled. It was a test. A what? They wanted to see if you could make it on your own. You know, build character. I just stared at him. He kept going like he thought this explanation made sense. They did the same thing to me, okay? When I turned 20, I had to prove myself. Dad watched how I handled things, and once he thought I was ready, he let me in. Gave me access to the family wealth. It was the same test for you. A laugh bubbled out of me, a sharp, bitter laugh. So you're telling me, I said, voice shaking, that our parents let me work dead-end jobs, struggle through college, stress about rent, Because they wanted to see if I was worthy of our own family's money? Ryan had the nerve to shrug. I mean, yeah. I clenched my fists under the table. And what, exactly, was I supposed to do to pass? Ryan hesitated. I don't know. I guess prove yourself. I laughed again, but this time I was seething. I had worked since I was 15. I had put myself through college with no help. I had busted my ass every single day just to survive. And that still wasn't enough for them? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. So when exactly were they planning to tell me? Ryan didn't answer. He just looked uncomfortable, playing with the condensation on his glass. And that's when I knew. They weren't, were they? My voice was deadly quiet. Ryan still wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad said you weren't ready yet. Something inside me snapped. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. You and Mom and Dad can all go to hell. I grabbed my phone and stormed out of the bar, leaving Ryan sitting there like an idiot. This wasn't just some twisted test. This was deliberate cruelty, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I drove home gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My own parents had let me suffer on purpose. I wasn't just angry. I was furious. And I still didn't know the full story. I needed more proof. I needed to see the life they'd been hiding from me. Ryan wasn't the smartest. He'd always been careless on social media, tagging himself at fancy restaurants and expensive resorts. So that night I went down the rabbit hole. I started with Mom's Facebook friends, digging through her rich wine-drinking book club buddies. And that's when I found her best friend's profile. One of her followers was an account called At the Harrisons Abroad. The profile was private, but the bio? Traveling the world with family and love, red heart globe showing America's #blessed life #luxury travel. I hit request follow, my heart pounding. I didn't expect them to accept. But then ding. At the Harrisons Abroad has accepted your request. I clicked the profile and my blood boiled. Post after post showed Mom, Dad, and Ryan in places I could only dream of. A luxury beachfront villa. The same one I'd found under RLM Holdings. A ski trip to Aspen, champagne in hand, dressed in designer gear. A private yacht in Greece captioned, "Nothing better than summer on the water." Sun speedboat. All while I was working double shifts just to make rent. But the worst? A picture from 2 years ago. It was Ryan sitting in a red Ferrari grinning like an idiot. The caption, "Dad surprised me with a little gift for my 23rd. Red heart #dreamcar #blessed. I had turned 23 that same year. You know what I got? A second-hand coffee maker Mom found at a garage sale. My stomach twisted. They weren't just hiding their wealth. They were deliberately excluding me. I needed to talk to someone who knew the truth. Someone on the inside. That's when I remembered Gloria. Gloria had been our housekeeper since I was a kid. She was kind, quiet, and always looked out for me. If anyone knew what was really going on, it was her. I called her the next morning. "Gloria, it's Jessica." There was a pause. "Oh, sweetheart. How are you?" I swallowed hard. Gloria, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest." Another pause. Then in a lower voice, "I always knew this day would come." My heart stopped. Gloria agreed to meet me in person. When we sat down at a small cafe, she took my hands in hers. "Jessica," she whispered, "your family is not who you think they are." I leaned in. "Tell me everything." And she did. She told me about the secret vacations, the expensive jewelry, the private parties at the penthouse I never knew existed. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos and videos, evidence. Videos of Mom laughing with her rich friends on a yacht. Dad making a toast at some high-end gala. Ryan standing in front of a private jet. But then Gloria's face darkened. "There's something else," she said, lowering her voice. "Something worse." I braced myself. "Your parents," she said, "never intended to let you in." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then whispered, "They always plan to cut you out, Jessica. They've been keeping you poor on purpose." I felt my stomach drop. I wasn't just being tested. I was being erased. And I was about to find out just how deep the betrayal went. Gloria's words echoed in my head. "They never intended to let you in. This wasn't a test. This wasn't about building character. My own parents had been systematically erasing me from the family's wealth and legacy, and I still didn't know why. Gloria hesitated before continuing. Your mother, she keeps a journal. I blinked. A journal. She writes everything down. Plans, thoughts, lists. I've seen her scribble notes about you, about Ryan, about the family fortune. My heart pounded. Where does she keep it? Gloria sighed. In her study. Top drawer of her desk. I didn't even hesitate. I was going to get that journal. That night, I drove to my parents' house. I still had a key. They were out, probably at some high-end restaurant or sipping cocktails at their penthouse. I had time. I walked in, every step calculated, and headed straight for Mom's study. The desk drawer was locked. I checked the bookshelves, feeling along the edges, and sure enough, tucked behind a row of old novels was a small silver key. I slid it into the lock, turned it, and click. There it was. A sleek leather-bound journal. I flipped it open, scanning the pages. And what I found made my blood run cold. It started off with small things, notes about Ryan's progress, discussions about investments. But then my name started appearing. And the more I read, the worse it got. Entry from 2015 when I was 18. Ryan is showing promise. He understands the importance of wealth and discretion. Jessica, on the other hand, too independent, too naive. She still thinks hard work is the key to success. She needs to struggle more. Entry from 2018 when I was in college, drowning in debt. Jessica applied for that scholarship. I made a call, ensured it wouldn't go through. She needs to learn that she isn't owed anything. Ryan understands this. She does not. I stopped breathing. They had blocked my scholarship. I could have graduated without debt. I could have had a future without struggling. But they sabotaged me. Entry from 2020, the year I begged for help with rent. Jessica called today asking for a loan. I told her no, of course. She needs to learn self-sufficiency. But Ryan needed money for the new condo, wired him $250,000. He's earned it. I felt sick. They let me starve while throwing hundreds of thousands at Ryan like it was pocket change. And then, the final worst entry, one dated just a few months ago. Entry from 2023, when I turned 25. Jessica is still struggling. Good. If she doesn't figure it out by 30, we'll formally remove her from the trust. Ryan agrees it's for the best. Some people are meant to succeed. Others are not. I dropped the journal, my hands shaking. They were planning to cut me out completely. By 30, I wouldn't just be poor. I'd be nothing to them. No inheritance, no trust, no acknowledgement. They had been stringing me along, watching me struggle, waiting for me to fail, so they could justify stealing everything that was meant for me. And Ryan, he was in on it. I took pictures of every single page, every word. I was done playing by their rules. I wasn't just going to confront them. I was going to destroy them. I left my parents' house that night with one goal: to take back everything they stole from me. They had spent years manipulating my life, making sure I struggled just so they could justify cutting me out. They sabotaged my education, my finances, my opportunities, all while living in luxury. But they made one mistake. They underestimated me. The first thing I did was organize everything I had. The investment statements I found in their kitchen. Property records showing RLM Holdings owned multiple luxury homes. Photos and videos from Gloria proving their hidden wealth. Screenshots from their secret Instagram account flaunting their luxury lifestyle. Mom's journal entries, which were practically a written confession of fraud and sabotage. I compiled everything into a digital folder and backed it up on 3 different hard drives. Then I made a plan. If my grandmother's trust had been intended for both me and Ryan, then my parents had been illegally siphoning my share into their fake companies. So, I contacted a lawyer, an elite one, the kind who specialized in trust fund fraud and financial crimes. When I showed him everything, he whistled low. This is bad. For them, I mean. I stared at him. Can I get my money back? He nodded. Oh, absolutely. And possibly press criminal charges. Perfect. I wasn't just going to win legally. I was going to humiliate them. I sent anonymized tips to financial journalists and online watchdogs, attaching screenshots of their secret wealth, shady business dealings, and tax fraud. I also created a burner Instagram account and posted the luxury vacation photos, the yachts, the Ferrari, tagging local news outlets with captions like, "Some families let their daughter work 3 jobs to survive while secretly hoarding millions. Hashtag fraud, hashtag exposed." Then I waited. For the final blow, I needed someone inside to turn on them. Ryan. I called him. "I know everything," I said. "Mom's journal, the properties, the money. Everything." Silence. Then, "Jess, you have one chance." I cut him off. "Mom and Dad are going down. But if you help me, if you testify that they've been embezzling from the trust, I'll make sure you get something out of this." Another long silence. Then Ryan exhaled sharply. "Screw it. I'll do it." I smiled. Checkmate. Within a week, my lawyer filed a lawsuit to reclaim my stolen inheritance. Investigators froze my parents' accounts while looking into fraud charges. The Instagram account went viral, with thousands of comments dragging my parents. Ryan flipped and agreed to testify. Then the best part, my parents found out. Mom called me 23 times before I finally picked up. "How could you do this to us?" she screamed. I laughed. Actually laughed. "How could you do this to me?" I shot back. "You spent years making sure I suffered while you stole what was mine. We were teaching you responsibility." I almost dropped the phone. Even now she was justifying it. "You weren't teaching me anything," I said, voice cold. "You were making sure I failed. And guess what? I didn't." I hung up. Then I turned off my phone and poured myself a drink. Because for the first time in my life, I had one. The storm hit fast. Within 2 weeks, my parents' perfect little empire collapsed. It started with the lawsuit. My lawyer filed an official claim against the trust, citing financial misconduct, fraudulent transfers, and misappropriation of funds. Since the trust had strict rules about equal distribution, their scheme was falling apart. Then the investigation started. The financial regulators froze their assets, pending review of potential fraud and tax evasion. Then came the media explosion. The Instagram account I created? It went viral. News outlets picked up the story. Wealthy family hides fortune while letting daughter live in poverty. Luxury lifestyles funded by fraud? Investigation underway. Everywhere they went, people recognized them. First, Ryan flipped completely. He provided emails, bank statements, and insider knowledge that proved my parents had been illegally funneling money through shell companies. He agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced penalty. Then Dad's business partners started pulling out. Once news spread that their finances were under federal scrutiny, investors abandoned ship. Contracts were canceled, partnerships dissolved. Their entire financial network crumbled overnight. And then the final knife to the heart. Their accounts were locked. Their credit cards were declined. They had millions on paper but no access to it. Mom called me again and again until I finally picked up. "You've destroyed this family," she sobbed. "No, Mom," I said, voice ice cold. "You did that when you decided I wasn't good enough to be part of it." Dad tried next, sounding furious. "We can fix this, Jessica," he said through clenched teeth. "Just drop the lawsuit. We'll figure something out." I laughed. "Funny," I said. "That's what I told you when I needed help. And you told me no." Click. I blocked their numbers. I kept up with the fallout through news reports and social media. Their Miami villa? Seized. Their Aspen ski lodge? Sold off at a loss. Their penthouse? Auctioned. Within a month, they went from filthy rich to completely screwed. And the final blow? Ryan's testimony and my mother's own journal were enough to get them officially charged with embezzlement and trust fund fraud. They were going to prison. The day before my parents' court hearing, I received one last email. From Mom. Subject: "We're sorry. Jessica. We never meant to hurt you. We only wanted to make you stronger. Please understand we did what we thought was best. We still love you. Please, we have nothing left. If there is any part of you that still loves us, drop the charges. Let's fix this. Mom and Dad." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back. Subject: "No. Mom, you didn't make me stronger. I did that on my own. See you in court." And I sent it. Court day arrived and my parents looked wrecked. Mom's usual polished, put-together look was gone. Her hair was messy, her eyes sunken, And she had that desperate, pleading expression I had only ever seen when she wanted something. Dad was even worse. The man who once controlled everything now looked small. His suit didn't fit right, and for the first time in my life he looked afraid. And Ryan? He sat on my side. The prosecution laid everything out. Millions siphoned from the trust into shell companies. Fraudulent transactions designed to keep me from my rightful inheritance. Mom's own journal entries, proof that they had intentionally sabotaged me. The final nail in the coffin? Ryan took the stand. I watched my parents' faces as he spoke, exposing every dirty secret. He admitted to knowing the plan, to benefiting from the fraud, to going along with it because he was afraid of losing everything. I was selfish, he said, looking directly at me. And I don't expect Jess to forgive me. But I won't lie for them anymore. Mom burst into tears. Dad just closed his eyes like he knew it was over. It didn't take long. Both my parents were found guilty of embezzlement, fraud, and trust mismanagement. The judge sentenced them to prison. Dad got 10 years. Mom got 7. And just like that, they went from millionaires to prisoners. After the trial, I met with my grandmother's lawyer, the man who had handled the trust before my parents stole from it. The good news, he said, smiling, is that we've recovered a lot of what was stolen. The original trust was always meant for both you and Ryan. Now that the fraud is exposed, your inheritance is fully restored. I braced myself. How much? He slid a document across the table. I scanned the numbers, my heart stopping. $90 million. I had gone from living paycheck to being a multimillionaire overnight. I exhaled slowly, my hands shaking. This was mine. This was what they had spent years stealing from me. And now, I had it all back. Before my parents were transferred to prison, I had the chance to see them one last time. I didn't have to go, but I wanted to. They sat in the cold, sterile visitation room, looking at me like I was their last hope. Mom started crying the second she saw me. Jessica, please. I raised a hand. Stop. She froze. I looked at them, really looked at them. Two people who had spent years making sure I stayed beneath them, now completely powerless. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them. I leaned in slightly. My voice was calm, even. You once told me that I had to struggle to earn my place in this family. I let that sink in. Well, Mom, Dad, now it's your turn. Then, without another word, I stood up and walked away. They called after me, begging. But I didn't look back. Because they weren't my family anymore. For the first time in my life, I was free. No more struggling to pay rent. No more juggling jobs just to survive. No more being controlled by people who never truly loved me. After the trial, I took some time to breathe. I kept my job for a few months, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel normal for a little while longer. But eventually I quit. Because I had bigger plans. Turning my pain into purpose. I thought about who I used to be. The girl who worked 3 jobs, who worried about every bill, who had no safety net while her family hoarded millions. So I created a foundation for low-income students. People like me who just needed a fair chance. I used part of my inheritance to fund scholarships, career development programs, and emergency grants for students whose families wouldn't, or couldn't, support them. No one was ever going to feel as abandoned as I did. Not if I could help it. Mom and Dad, still in prison. I haven't visited them since. Occasionally, I get letters, long rambling things about how they only wanted to make me stronger, and how family should forgive. I never write back. Ryan. He got probation for cooperating with the case. We talk sometimes, not like siblings but like two people who barely know each other. He tries to apologize, but I don't think he really understands what he did. Maybe he never will. Gloria. I gave her a massive bonus and set her up with a comfortable retirement fund. She cried when I told her. You're the best of them, she said. I like to think she's right. One day, I drove past my parents' old house. The place where I grew up believing we were struggling. It was empty now, foreclosed and abandoned. It should have made me feel something, nostalgia, sadness, maybe even regret. But I felt nothing. Because they never truly made me part of their family. I built my own future, and I did it without them. And that was the ultimate victory.